My negligence cost my partner her life, and I'm about to lose everything. This is a content warning. It's going to be talking about violence and death. I, 35 male, have been married to Lisa, 28 female, for 3 years, together for 7. A year ago, I fell deeply in love with Amy, 24 female, and have been planning to end my marriage for her. I know it's terrible and not what my wife deserves, but we were the real thing. 2 weeks ago, she had an allergic reaction when we were getting food after work, but she used her EpiPen and seemed mostly okay afterwards. She usually gets checked at the hospital after a reaction, but I asked if I could take her home and she could get her friend to drive her there because my wife was expecting me back. All I know is that she had a secondary reaction that evening and died. I didn't even find out about it until the following Monday, through a work email. It's been eating me up ever since, and I will never forgive myself for not sacrificing an hour of my time to possibly save her. I sent some childish messages to Amy when I didn't hear from her over the weekend because I thought she was angry I didn't take her to the hospital. I am thankful she never saw them and ashamed that I assumed the worst. Our relationship was great and the highs far outweighed the lows, but I had always hated being ignored and I lose my cool when it happens. It is not a regular occurrence and I would have more than made it up to her. Yesterday at work, HR and legal were in the CEO's office all day and my manager ended up canceling our project meeting because he was with them all afternoon. I was on edge. But an affair isn't exactly a corporate crisis, and I thought something would have already happened if anyone knew. I am now 99% certain it was about me. A few hours ago, I received a message from Amy's phone which said, "This is Amy's brother Tom. I want you to know it was me." I tried to call, but it went straight to voicemail, and none of the messages have been delivered. I tried to call my manager more times than I should have, and he sent a message saying, "Please don't contact me until Monday morning. I can't discuss anything with you right now." So it looks like my universe is going to collapse. I'm going to be fired, and my wife will definitely find out why. All I can do is hope that Amy's brother only showed them the messages from that weekend and they were bad enough. I have no family except my wife and daughter and nowhere to go. All of my friends are either people I've met through my wife or my colleagues. On Monday, everything I spent over a decade working towards disappears. I can't stop it. I can't talk to anyone about it. So here I am. I know cheaters are the devil, so I'm not expecting sympathy, but this is making my chest hurt and I need to get it out there. I have been consistently harassed for an update since posting, so please take it. Gloat because you're such wonderful people in comparison, and stop following me around Reddit. I'm suffering in the wake of my infidelity and unprofessional behavior as I knew I would. I understand that it is an appropriate outcome and I'm taking full accountability. I was suspended from work on Monday and I'll probably be fired sooner than I thought. I'd hoped to be able to save money as HR built their case, but it looks like Amy's brother basically performed the entire investigation for them. After the excruciating 3-hour run through everything they had, I spoke to the founder and he recommended the solicitor I am now using. The issue is that the company has to come down hard to protect themselves, because even though Amy's family doesn't have much chance of a claim, any suggestion of a cover-up could cause damage regardless. The founder still thinks my offer to pay them back will keep it out of court, and some more information has come to light, so it's not certain I won't be prosecuted, but I'm quietly hopeful. I can't afford to keep the solicitor if this goes much further, especially with the divorce on the horizon. Good, your wife knows. Things are not good with my wife. I'm still committed to making this as easy as possible for her, but I had to draw a line when it came to my daughter. When I got home from being unceremoniously escorted out of my office, she already had a bag packed for me. She wouldn't let me wait at the house until my daughter was back. She wouldn't let me check. I had everything I needed. She wouldn't let me take the car, and she didn't care that I had nowhere to go. Spent 2 nights in a hotel and then went back when she refused to let me see my little girl. She tried to stop me, but we owned the house jointly and it was my only option. My wife has family she could stay with, but she won't leave our daughter here and she's absolutely not taking her. So we're at a stalemate right now. I'm keeping out of her way as best as I can, which I appreciate, is the least I can do. The Amy situation is quite difficult to talk about and a lot hasn't sunk in yet. It turns out that she didn't love me as much as I loved her, if at all. Her brother sent me images of her talking to her friends about me, and it's hard to believe they came from the person I loved, but they are real. Sorry to those who are heavily invested in me being a predatory abuser, but she and her friends had a good laugh about her manipulating me for money and a promotion. The role came with a big pay raise, and it looks like her plan was to treat us free cash, then go work with one of her friends when it fell through. She knew I'd come under scrutiny whenever she messed up and assumed I'd keep stepping in to save her. She was right. Obviously, I'm completely humiliated. I was planning to give up everything to build a life with her, and she was treating me like a joke the whole time. My feelings are complicated, so please don't feel entitled to any expansion on this, but I no longer feel guilt over her death. Reddit acted like I kept her hostage while she begged for help. What actually happened was that I asked if she could ask her friend to take her to the hospital because I had to go home. She said that was fine because she needed to go get some clothes back from her anyway, and I dropped her off as normal. Ultimately, she was an adult who had a better understanding of her medical needs than I did. I still don't know what happened between us saying goodbye and her death, but whatever it was, it had nothing to do with me. I'm sorry for her family's loss, but I bear no responsibility for her passing. After Amy's message to her friends were passed around, a few people quietly reached out with words of support. I assumed everyone would write me off like Reddit did, as an abuser and a predator. Now it's clear that Amy was using me. They see me as a fool who had then lost it all. It's beyond humiliating, but I have learned I'd rather be pitied and despised, and improves my legal position with work. They're small mercies, but I'll take what I can get. I remain filled with regret, and I have learned many lessons by the time I get through this. I may have been deceived, but I'm a grown man who made my choices, and I take full responsibility for them.
My engagement may be ending because I'm refusing to make my fiance's sister a bridesmaid. My fiance and I are supposed to be getting married next month. Yes, you heard that right. Next month, in November. My fiance proposed about a year ago, so I've been spending the past year planning everything out, okay? I was one of those girls that was pretty type A about my wedding planning. I had the Pinterest board since I was little, so I knew exactly what I wanted, and I've been spending the last year making the most beautiful wedding of all time. I am so excited. One of the first things I did after getting engaged was pick out my bridesmaids and ask them to be in my wedding party, because there's a lot that goes into being a bridesmaid, okay? You have to buy the dress, there's the time commitment, you have to make sure you can actually make it to the wedding date. So I wanted to make sure my 5 best friends could be there, and they all said yes. Last week, yes, I'm repeating it, last week, a month before our wedding, my fiance, for the very first time, brought up the idea to include his little sister in the wedding party. Again, our wedding is in 1 month. I was like, babe, this is a conversation we should have had last year when I was picking out my bridesmaids. Not right now. Not after everything has been planned. Now, to be completely transparent, I don't hate my fiance's little sister, but I'm not her biggest fan. The last time I hung out with her is whenever we went wedding dress shopping, and my fiance requested that I invite her to come along. Again, I agreed, okay? I'm trying my best to be adaptable and to include her in things, but she did not have a single nice thing to say to me the entire time. At one point, I stepped out in one of the dresses and she said, maybe you should consider slimming down before your wedding. I feel like the dresses would look a lot better on you if you did. This one was absolutely wild. She said at one point, if I was my brother, I wouldn't want to get married to you looking like that. Well, good thing you're not your brother, okay? Because I wouldn't want to marry somebody with that kind of negativity. When I told my fiance she said these things, he was like, don't let it get to you. She's just a harsh critic. That's how she's always been. Okay, I feel like that's not being a harsh critic. That's actually just like attacking me in the way I look. So, reason number 1 that I don't want her in my wedding party is because she's not necessarily the most positive person. She's a mean girl, okay? I don't really want a mean girl in my wedding party on one of the most special days of my life. But the second reason that I don't want her in my wedding party is because we've already purchased the dresses. I have 5 bridesmaids and we've ordered 5 dresses. My bridesmaids all paid out of pocket for them and they were custom made to be for those girls. We do not have time to order another dress, okay? Even rush ordering another dress, it wouldn't come in time. So there's no way I could just add on another bridesmaids because we don't have another dress. But according to my fiance, this wasn't a problem at all. He had an amazing solution. I should just cut one of my bridesmaids and then let his little sister take her place. And then she could just take the dress. And then he's like, you know what? Just pay your bridesmaid back for the dress, apologize, say that she's still invited to the wedding, but she's not a bridesmaid anymore. What? I'm sorry. Can we just rewind that? Rewind the tape. You really think that's a good idea? I was like, really? You think this is a good idea? To cut one of my best friends in the world a month before my wedding? That would end a friendship, right? I'm basically saying, out of all of my best friends, you're my least favorite of my best friends. You're the most disposable. I'm gonna cut you. No, I'm not treating any of my friends like that. All of my friends, it's essential for them to be in the wedding party, okay? None of them are getting cut. They've also all helped me so much with the wedding planning, been so supportive and amazing over the past year. I want them up there with me. It's important that they're all up there with me. I love them all so much. I cannot even believe he suggested this. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of his little sister, if he would have told me it was important to him that she was a bridesmaid a year ago, I would have included her in my wedding party, okay? I love my fiance. I understand that this is his wedding too, and if he wants one of his family members to be included in the wedding party, I would have been accommodating to that. But he did not say anything until a month before the wedding, when literally there is no way to make it work, to coordinate it. My fiance and I are currently not speaking at all. He told me that he can't believe that I am not accommodating a family member of his when he knows how important family is to him. I'm like, I'm sorry. You asked me to take her dress shopping. I did that. If you would have told me when I was picking bridesmaids to accommodate her, I would have done that. You didn't ask. But I'm not speaking to him because I think it's absolutely absurd that he wants me to just treat my friends like trash, treat them like they're actually disposable. He knows how much my friends mean to me. I see my friends like family. And the fact he just wants me to kick one to the curb and say, sorry, girl, actually, you're not in the wedding party anymore. That's insane. And the fact that he doesn't even understand why I'm not willing to do that to one of my friends, maybe our values aren't as similar as I thought they were. Before this, I really thought my fiance was the love of my life and my soulmate, but now we might not even be getting married. Like a month before my dream wedding, it's just gonna fall apart. I keep hoping that he's gonna apologize for his behavior and say that he came to his senses about the whole thing, but I don't know. The wedding is getting closer and closer, and it seems like we're still at a standstill about this situation.
That's Gail, and she found out that her husband of 26 years was cheating on her entire marriage. So one day, Gail's husband is flying home from Europe, and he told her that he was going to be out there for a business trip. He said that this was going to be a speaking engagement and that it was the hardest $25,000 he ever had to earn. He's telling her, I miss you, I can't wait to see you, and she's telling him like the same thing, right? She's thinking everything is normal. She wanted to make dinner for him when he landed. So she calls the airlines because she's driving at the time and wanted to know when the flight landed. And she asked the rep, like, hey, here's the flight number. What time is my husband landing? And he's like, oh, I need your husband's name. And after telling him, like, if I was looking this up online, I wouldn't need his name. Why do you need his name? He was like insisting, like, I need the name, I need the name. So she finally gives over her husband's name. The rep is like, yes, Mr. Harold and Mrs. Sabrina landed about 20 minutes ago. And the wife is like, what? I don't know who Sabrina is, but yes, Harold's my husband. Okay, he landed 20 minutes ago. And he's like, yes, Mr. Harold and Mrs. Sabrina landed a few moments ago. And I'm just going to use real names because it just makes it easier. And she's like, very confused. And so she's like, okay, thank you. So then her husband calls when she gets off the phone, and she's fighting, not trying to spill the information. And he's like, I missed you. I'm so excited to see you soon. And she's like, yeah. So she's like, I'm going to stay quiet and wait for him to get home. So he gets home and she's like, oh, tell me about your trip. Let me see photos. Like, how was it? How was it? And he's like, oh, same old, same old. I didn't really take photos because, we were ripping and running. Like, there was no time for that. Mind you, at this point in their marriage, she thinks that she has the perfect husband, that he is like a gem, that she's just so fortunate, would never cheat on her. She had no idea what she was about to uncover. They sit down to have dinner, and she brings up what the rep told her. And she's like, hey, when I called to ask when you were landing, the rep told me that this other person was on your itinerary. And he's like, who's that? I don't know who that is. And she's like, I don't know. You told me. He's the one that said that she was on your itinerary. She tells him that the name the rep told her was Sabrina, and he's telling her, like, people make mistakes all the time. That must have been a mistake. I don't know, it's Sabrina. So she just kind of puts it in the back of her head, but in her heart, she felt like something's not right. Like, there's more to this story. She goes to sleep that night, and she's literally sick to her stomach. She's like, what am I gonna do? She's crying and crying, and she gets this idea, like, I need to go check the credit card bill. And she, has been married for 26 years. She doesn't know what's happening in their finances. She trusts her husband completely. So she never really does this, but they're piled up on her kitchen counter. She's like, tomorrow morning, I'm going to go look through those bills. The next morning, it's Sunday morning, and she's like, okay, I'm going to go to church. He makes up some excuse like, oh, I have to go to work, and doesn't go to church with her. When she gets back, she was getting ready to go to a Falcons game, but then something was like, hey, girl, go check them bills. So she's like, I'm about to go do that right now. So she walks over to the bills and opens up just one bill, and she sees this girl's name up and through that bill several times, consistently. Mind you, this is her credit card that she put him as an authorized user on years ago, and she's seeing flights all over the place, trips, just all types of things, and this woman's name running through her bill over and over and over again. At this point, she's running late to the game. She's like, I gotta go. She tries to be present with her girls and enjoy herself, but she literally can't. All she's thinking about is these bills. When she got home from the game, she was able to see from December 2021 all the way to October 2022, Sabrina's name was through that bill consistently. When he was traveling for work and telling Gail that he couldn't come with her because he was going to be busy or wasn't going to be fun, it was actually because he was with Sabrina. The dates started correlating. She's crying hysterically at this point. She calls him, no answer. She texts him, no answer. She calls his boy, whose house he said he was going to go watch the game at. He doesn't pick up. She texts his friend, and she's like, hey, is my husband with you? He doesn't reply. She's like, what is going on? Finally, the husband calls her back, and he's like, hey, sorry, I ran out to grab something. What's going on? She just starts repeating the name Sabrina over and over and over again. And he's like, why do you keep saying that name? What is wrong with you? And she's like, just keep saying it, keep saying it. Gail tells him, I know everything. The gig is up, you nasty mother. He's like, hold on, what's going on? What's going on? I'm coming home right now. She's like, yeah, come on home, come on home. He tries to run into the house all hyped up, like, why you keep saying this woman's name? Why you keep saying this woman's name? Gail looks at her husband and tells him, I'm going to ask you one time, and don't lie to me because I know the truth. Was this woman with you on this flight? He's like, no, I don't know why you keep mentioning her. She's like, don't lie to me now. I really do know the truth. At that point, something, I don't know, clicked in his head because his mask fell right off, she said. And he just admitted to it and was like, yeah, she was. She's like, well, is she your girlfriend? He's like, yeah. She's like, well, how long have you been together? He's like, a few years. At this point, Gail is crying hysterically. She's getting a banging headache, and she already has blood pressure issues, so her blood pressure ends up skyrocketing, something crazy. And she's like, I have to go to the hospital. I literally cannot deal with this anymore. He offers to drive her, and she's like, no, I'll take my chances. I don't need you. Drives herself to the hospital, and she's there. She's hyperventilating. They're telling her, ma'am, you need to calm down. You are literally going to have a stroke if you do not calm down and get this heart rate and this blood pressure under control. They call her doctor. They get her medications. They get her to calm down. They send her back home, and she walks in, and he's just laying on the couch eating Cheetos like nothing is wrong, like absolutely fine, talking about what they tell you. She goes to sleep that night just crying her eyes out, just weeping, and she's like, I cried so hard I woke up the next morning, my eyes were almost swollen shut, you know. And she walks out the room because she slept in a separate room from him that night, and he's like walking around whistling, feeling great, having a good old time, like feeling lighter, like his load is lighter, she said. Like she felt heavy as a ton of bricks, but he's walking around like, oh, the truth is out, I am good now. Like, stark differences in the experience, basically. She just looks at him. She goes, what made you treat me like this? Like, what made you do this? Like, what did I do wrong? Like, where did I fall short? And he's like, you didn't do nothing wrong. You're a great wife, actually. I have no issues with you. She's like, I do my best to, you know, take care of myself. I try to make myself look presentable to you. Like, where did I go wrong? He's like, nothing. You didn't do anything wrong. So she's like, okay, well, I'm confused by that. Well, this is what I'm going to need from you. She's like, I'm going to want you to sell the house. I'm going to want to move away, and I'm going to want you to go to counseling. And he's like, well, I don't know why you want all that, but okay, I'll go. And she's like still very confused by his response to that. So she asked him, are you going to continue seeing her? And he goes, well, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm not going to see her. She's like, oh, so you want a divorce? And he's like, no, I don't want a divorce. I'm not going to let anybody come in and F up my money. So at this point, she's like, what, he wants me to stay with him while he like does his thing and we stay? Like, no, we're clearly moving towards a divorce now. So she gets her name, goes to Instagram and starts doing a little bit of digging. And she's like, well, thank God, at least there's no photos of them together on their Instagram. At this point, she hasn't even told her friends and family about this yet. Her best friend ends up calling her, and she is like trying to hide it from her best friend, but she ends up breaking down and telling her everything. And her best friend's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. She's literally shocked. The best friend that always has something to say literally had nothing to say. She just sat there on the phone. Gail's looking at this woman's Instagram like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful, she's so young, like of course he wants her, like look at me, like just like, you know, really beating herself up. Her friends are like, first of all, she kind of looked like you, sorry friend. Second of all, that's all plastic surgery, that's all fillers, like she could never. When she finally meets up with her friends for lunch, they tell her like they do have photos together. They are out there, you know, being, you know, photographed together. And she was just like heartbroken. Like, you're really out here embarrassing me. So a few days later, he tells her like, hey, I think we need a break for like 3 to 6 months. Like, I'm going to go away. You're going to stay here. I think we just need some time apart. And she's like, okay. And he's like, if you find somebody in those like 3 to 6 months, like feel free to like go with them. So when Gail first initially shared this story back in January of 2024, it started with her sharing the husband and the mistress at the airport together, and her being like, good morning, Harold, have a good flight. And then the mistress sitting there like stunned, the husband stunned. And then she went on to share like an 8-part story, and that's what I just told you guys right now. Then she comes back because the mistress ended up having a response basically saying like, Gail, you were the side chick at one point, your husband was married when you got with him. And Gail came back and was like, I didn't know he was married. When I found out he was married, I made him go file for divorce, and I didn't date him until he filed for a divorce, even though I ended up finding out that he lied to me and never filed for divorce, and we started dating. So I never had the intentions of being a side chick, you did. And then she comes out with the receipts because Sabrina was claiming that like Gail was trying to be like her, and she's like, girl, I've had these blonde hair that you're saying that I copied from you for over 20 years. Like, she's pulled out receipts, showed photos of her and her husband from like back in the day when she'd been had this hairstyle. Gail even states that when she first met her husband, she was not attracted to him. He was morbidly obese, and she did not find him attractive. It wasn't until she got to know him and got to know his personality, and of course the gifts kind of helped. She warmed up to him, and they eventually got married. But she wanted to clarify like to what that woman said, like, I was never a side chick, you know. The wife and the mistress have a little bit of back and forth, not too much, mostly like in the comments of Instagram photos. But for the most part, like the wife finds out that the mistress was encouraging the husband to leave Gail and to go be with her. And she was just like, what kind of woman are you? So then 3 days ago, Gail came back and gave us an update, telling us basically that like the woman got super disrespectful. She started leaving things in the car for Gail to find, like her panties, her hair accessories. She was subbing her on Instagram, putting clips from the movie Harlem Nights, trying to like sub her, being like, your husband's never coming home kind of thing. She really realized her husband did not care about her at all, and this mistress was actually relishing in her pain and in her trauma. After going through all the information and going through and digging and finding out a lot of info, she not only found out that her husband was cheating on her, not only with Sabrina, but with over 20 different women. And not only that, but he was financing a lot of these women. With Sabrina specifically, he was financing her mother, the boyfriend, the children. Everybody was getting cash apps apparently. On top of that, he was taking them to trips. He was sending Sabrina and her girls off on trips. He was buying them Cartier. He was doing all types of stuff. He was just cashing out on these women, all while having a wife. Like, she dug about 10 years into the past and found over 20 women in just the first 5 years alone. She said all of this was just so detrimental and so damaging to herself and her self-esteem and her whole mindset, because she was just like, these women are young, they're beautiful, they're vivacious, I'm feeling old, I'm feeling run down, I'm feeling, lifeless. Like, what is he trying to communicate to me through these women that he chooses, and just really felt like I was in a really dark place when I first found out all of this. Like, I thought my husband was great, and he turned out to be a complete scumbag our entire relationship. And what was even more saddening was that when she went to go talk to lawyers within the first 2 weeks of finding out that she was having a divorce, the lawyers had a lot of tough questions for her, and Gail unfortunately didn't have the answers. She didn't know where the money was, how much they even had. She didn't know a lot of key information, and she was just telling people, like, please don't lose this type of control in your marriage. Know what's going on, be a part of the finances, know where everything is, just don't be ever so trusting. Like, she completely and utterly trusted her husband with her life. And this man, even when she would have surgeries, would run off and not be there to take care of her, but he would be with all these different women that she ended up finding out over the course of 26 years, instead of being there for her when she needed him the most. After going through their messages and reading Sabrina and his conversation, he was traumatized reading all of these messages, but she had to find out the truth, and she wasn't going to get it from the husband. So the day she found out about the affair was actually them coming back from her birthday trip in Paris that they spent together. And then the very next weekend, they were actually about to go on another trip to celebrate their anniversary. So she's sitting there in the house like, I didn't even kick you out, and you're going on all these trips with this woman. So she is like, whatever, do your thing. They go on a trip, and then he says, I'm not going to come back to the house because I feel like you're going to do something to me. The last time we were arguing, you had your eyes half closed. And she's like, boy, I'm not about to throw my life away for you, for her, for this situation, for nobody. Like, y'all not worth it. She also cautions people to not cheat on folks that have been in law enforcement, because they can look up all types of things. So at this point, she don't know where this man is, and she's like looking at his stuff, getting triggered, smelling his smell in the house. She's like, I need him to get his stuff out of this house. So she messages him, and he's like, I pay for the mortgage in that house. I'm not moving anything. And she's like, well, that's not fair. You moved this girl from California all the way to Atlanta. You're paying her mortgage. Go be where you want to be. Like, why do I have to be punished for you having an affair? Like, I'm very confused by that. The wildest part about all of this too is a lot of these women knew about Gail. Not only did they know Gail, they would show up at events that Gail would be at, would be there with her husband, and they would come and smile in her face and talk to her, and some of them would even serve her food and be servers at the events that she was at, and would just be like acting like it was normal. She was like, what kick was this guy getting about being in the same room with his wife and the women that he's sleeping with? I think that hurt her a lot too, just knowing like these women were just like kikiing and smiling in her face, all while sleeping with her man and getting their life financed by him. Absolutely insane. After talking to the attorneys and them telling her, like, ma'am, you don't know a lot of key information, you're going to need to go digging, she asked God. She was like, God, I don't even know where to start. Please help me. And he just started showing her everything. When she texted him and confronted him about the 20 women, he was just like acting super cocky, like, yeah, whatever. And she was just like, what the hell? So she's like, you know what? I got something for that ass. She put all 20 women in a group message, messaged them all, talking shit, dragging them. She put a picture of the husband in there too, just so there wasn't any confusion. And these women are responding back like, I don't know who that is. You got the wrong number. She's like, well, if this is the wrong number, block me. She had a boss. She was like, was that the most mature thing to do? Nope. Did it feel good in the moment? Yep. And I'm happy for you, Gail. I'm glad you got your ones and twos in. She was actually shocked what these women were willing to do for a bag, for a trip, for a little bit of money. But she's like, women are gullible. I'm gullible too. But she's like, I'm not that gullible, So she was like, I can blame these women, but I can't, because at the end of the day, he was the one that was married. He's the one that made the vows to me. So she was fully aware who the actual enemy was, filed for divorce in December 2022, moved on with her life. She wants to share more stories. She said, I want to share some more stories because I don't know a woman named Andre.
Am I the astronaut? I told my mother-in-law that's all on her. My 5-year-old son's birthday is coming up and he wants a chocolate cake with chocolate icing. It's his birthday, so I said yes. My mother-in-law can be a selfish cow sometimes, and my son was telling her how he's getting a chocolate cake and chocolate ice cream. My mother-in-law said that she didn't like that, and my son should get something we all like. My son said, it's not your birthday and you don't get a say. This would normally be disrespectful, but recently said this to my son when we went to his friend's party. When my son didn't like the cake flavor and we had a discussion about how the birthday person gets to choose their cake flavor because it's their special day. My mother-in-law was shocked and I told her the same thing I told my son. When it's your birthday, you can get whatever flavor of cake you want. My mother-in-law called me a bitch and my son a spoiled brat. So I told her, with that attitude, you won't be coming to the party. My husband was WTF and tried to talk me into ordering his mom a cake. I said, no, it isn't her day. And that just teaches our son to act entitled at other people's parties. If we don't stick to the rules and etiquette that we explain to him, it will just make him confused, entitled, and spoiled. My husband saw the truth in that because our son was excited about his birthday cake for his birthday and now understands that not everything is about him. Other people get to enjoy their special event how they want to. In return, my son gets to enjoy his special event and occasions how he wants to. My mother-in-law doesn't seem to get that and wants my son to write her a sorry note and what he did wrong. My husband and I don't feel like my son did anything wrong by repeating what his parents told him. My mother-in-law said she's not coming to the birthday party or getting him a gift without the apology note. I told my mother-in-law that's all on her.
Okay, so everyone knows that I look and sound way younger than I actually am, and that has led to many funny interactions over the years. I managed to have one of those interactions today, so I thought I'd tell you about it because it was pretty funny. Let's go. So, I used to work at a fabric shop, right? And I went there today with my mum because it's almost my 21st birthday and we're getting some ribbon to decorate. So because I work there, I know some of the people and I was talking to some of my old supervisors and things like that beforehand. Anyway, I went with my mum up to the front counter to pay for the ribbon and another lady served me who I had never met before, so she didn't actually know me. She was obviously new. Anyway, she brings my stuff through and she was like, do you have a VIP card for the loyalty program? And my mum had my old team member card and sometimes I will give that to pay for things because apparently you're still allowed to use it, but I don't do it all the time because I don't know if it's right. Like the staff discount. And so my mum goes to give her my staff thing and then I was like to my mum, no, don't worry about it, I'll just give her my normal customer number. And she looks at me and she looks at my mum, she goes, oh. And I'm like, what is funny about that? And then she was like, oh, did you sign up, did you? And my mum kind of goes to say something and I just look at her and I'm like, don't worry about it, like, just don't worry. Okay, but it doesn't stop there, it keeps going. So then the lady's just kind of looking at me like, while I was paying, and then she goes, do you sew as well? And then my mum was like looking at me like, bro, just tell her you're not 5, because basically the lady was insinuating that I was really young and that it was like weird for me to be a member because I was like a kid. And I was like, yeah, I sew. But literally what I felt like saying was, bro, I literally used to work here in the sewing department for 3 years where I used to show people how to make things and literally make my own clothes. And I used to help people with their sewing projects and give them advice and things like that. Pick out sewing machines for people and all that kind of stuff. But as I said, I was just like, yeah. And then she was like, oh, what stuff do you sew? And I was just like, oh, you know, I just sew aprons and like little things like that. And she was like, oh, okay. Whereas, like, I've actually made my own clothes and things before, but I just didn't want to get into it, you know? And then my mom was just looking at me like, are you actually serious? Like, but then I kind of was just, I kept, like, tapping her, and I was like, I don't want to get into it, you know? I really don't want to get into it. Anyway, that was the whole experience. Basically, she just thought that I was really young, and, like, I've had people speak to me in, like, those condescending, like, I'm a little kid way for ages, and I'm like, surely this is going to stop soon. Like, every year I get older, I'm like, okay, surely the little, like, kid allegations are going to stop soon, but no, apparently they haven't stopped. Like, every time I'm like, are you actually serious? Like, how much do I look like a kid? Anyway, and also there's no hate to this lady at all. Like, she obviously didn't know me, and I just thought it was funny that it was at my old workplace, because I do know quite a few people there, and I used to work there for quite a few years, so anyway, things change. Anyway, that's the end of my story. I might go ask Mom now if I can do some sewing. Bye!